Imagine walking into a stadium so expensive that it cost more than some skyscrapers. Imagine a building so advanced that it can transform itself from an NFL arena into a World Cup venue almost overnight. And imagine that the biggest match in world soccer will be played inside one of these structures. The strange part is that World Cup 2026 isn't just about the teams. It's also about the stadiums, because this tournament will be played inside some of the most ambitious sports venues ever built. And together, they may completely change how the world experiences a World Cup. Most fans think stadiums are simply places where matches happen, seats, grass, crowds. But the reality is far more complicated. Because modern stadiums have become technological marvels. Some cost billions of dollars, some contain entire entertainment districts, and some are so advanced that visiting fans often spend as much time talking about the venue as the match itself. To understand why this World Cup feels different, we need to start in Los Angeles, because that's where one of the most expensive sports venues in human history changed the rules entirely. SoFi Stadium didn't just break records, it shattered them. When construction was completed, the price tag reportedly exceeded $5 billion. For modern fans, that number barely sounds real, and that's where things become fascinating. Because SoFi wasn't designed only as a stadium, it was designed as an experience. Massive video technology surrounds spectators. Entertainment spaces stretch throughout the complex. Every detail was built with the future in mind, but the most important detail is often overlooked. SoFi was never built specifically for soccer. It was built for American football, which creates a challenge every World Cup host in the United States must solve. Because FIFA has different field requirements, different layouts, different sight lines, different expectations. What happened next surprised many people. Engineers created systems that allow the stadium to adapt. Entire sections can be modified, field dimensions can change, spaces can be reconfigured. Suddenly, a venue designed for one sport becomes a global stage for another. And that's when everything changes. Because SoFi isn't the only giant in this tournament. To understand the next stadium, we have to travel to Texas. Because if SoFi represents the future, AT&T Stadium represents scale. Everything about it feels enormous. The structure dominates the landscape. The capacity is staggering, and the video screen hanging above the field became famous long before the World Cup arrived. For many visitors, simply entering the building feels like an event, and that's exactly the point. Because modern sports venues are no longer designed only for spectators. They're designed to create unforgettable moments. But that's only part of the story. Because bigger doesn't always mean better. The most successful stadiums create atmosphere, and atmosphere can transform an entire tournament. Imagine more than 80,000 fans packed into a single venue. Imagine national anthems echoing through the building. Imagine a knockout match decided in the final minutes. Suddenly, the stadium itself becomes part of the memory. And few places understand that better than Mexico City. Because while SoFi represents the future, and AT&T represents American gigantism, Azteca Stadium represents history. To understand why this stadium matters, you need context. Many World Cup venues host matches. Azteca hosts legends. This is where Pelé lifted the World Cup. This is where Diego Maradona produced some of the most famous moments in soccer history. Generations of fans associate the stadium with football mythology. And what makes 2026 remarkable is that Azteca will continue adding chapters to that story. Very few stadiums remain relevant across multiple generations. Even fewer remain iconic. Azteca managed both. For modern fans, this may seem unusual. Most stadiums eventually become outdated. New venues replace them, new technology arrives, new expectations emerge. Yet Azteca survived because history itself became part of its identity. And that's where the story becomes much bigger. Because World Cup 2026 isn't simply balancing old and new, it's combining them. The future in Los Angeles, the scale of Texas, the history of Mexico City. But the most important venue may be somewhere else entirely, because every World Cup eventually leads to one destination, the final. And in 2026, that destination is MetLife Stadium. For years, MetLife has hosted massive sporting events, but hosting the World Cup final places it in a different category, because finals are remembered differently. People forget group matches. They forget routine victories. They rarely forget the place where a champion is crowned. And that's why MetLife suddenly becomes more than a stadium. It becomes the final stage of the entire tournament. Imagine the final whistle. Imagine confetti falling. Imagine a captain lifting the trophy. The images will travel across the world. And for decades, fans will associate those moments with one location. That's the power of a World Cup final. But the most interesting detail is that the tournament doesn't depend on only 4 stadiums, because behind the headlines sits an enormous network of venues spread across 3 countries: Seattle, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami, Houston, Boston, Vancouver, Toronto, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and many more. Each brings its own culture, its own atmosphere, its own identity. Some are famous for architecture, others for fan culture, others for location. Together, they create something no previous World Cup has attempted at this scale, a tournament stretching across an entire continent. And that's when everything changes again. Because most people believe the story of World Cup stadiums is about money. $5 billion here, $2 billion there, record construction costs, record capacities. But the reality is much more interesting. These stadiums are trying to create memories. The greatest World Cup moments rarely happen because a building is expensive. They happen because millions of people experience something unforgettable inside it. A dramatic goal, a shocking upset, a legendary performance, a trophy lift. And once those moments happen, the stadium becomes part of football history forever. That's why World Cup 2026 feels different. Not because it has bigger buildings, not because it has more technology, but because it combines the future, the present, and the past in a way we've never seen before. So, can these billion-dollar stadiums actually change the World Cup experience? History suggests they can. But ultimately, the buildings are only waiting. The real story begins when the fans arrive, when the matches start, and when one of these stadiums becomes the place where the next football legend is born. Which World Cup 2026 stadium are you most excited to see? And if you could attend one match anywhere, which venue would you choose? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching The World Game, and I'll see you in the next story.